Hello, good evening, and welcome to Live Chat with Josey. Today, I'm so excited to be speaking to my Hausa Nigerian brother. His name is Audu Bulama Bukarti. Did I pronounce that very well?
Correctly.
All right, so I will introduce yourself because I just don't want you to say your name. He's a sub-Saharan African analyst at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, based in London. He's also a senior non-resident associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, based in DC. And he's also a columnist with Daily Trust, a Nigerian newspaper. I know there are other titles and offices that he holds, but that's what we will say for today. Welcome to the show, Audu.
Thank you very much. I am impressed at you pronouncing my name correctly. I don't get lots of that. And so I tell you, I can see that the Zimbabweans are very intelligent. Maybe you took it from Mugabe.
Yes, definitely. I mean, an apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So yes, we are eloquent like Mugabe. But let's go straight away into the issues and the reason why we had this live chat today. Insurgency in Nigeria, insecurity in Nigeria. I mean, a lot is happening in Nigeria. Let's talk about the president's promises in both his campaigns in 2015 and 2019, which were centered in fighting insecurity. What can you say about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, Nigeria has been facing insecurity for ages now. The Boko Haram crisis started more than 11 years ago, and it still is raging in the country, as we saw in the latest attack, where at least 70 people, as at now, mostly farmers, lost their life in a tragic event. In the Northwest also, insecurity, mainly by criminal gangs, is ravaging that part of the country. Farmers are unable to harvest their crops or access their farms, and people are abducted on the highways, in their homes, in their offices, including 12 police officers recently. Unfortunately, none of this started today, and that's why insecurity was a major campaign promise in 2015 when President General Muhammadu Buhari then was campaigning for the office of president. And I think insecurity in the country was one of the reasons why President Jonathan lost election in 2015. And when President Buhari came into power in 2015, he took very progressive steps, such as changing the service chiefs, reviving the multinational joint task force, which is a military unit comprising of military soldiers from Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, and Chad, and Benin. And they did a great work, especially in the first 6 months of the Buhari presidency, and they succeeded in dislodging Boko Haram. Unfortunately, they mistook dislodging Boko Haram for defeating it. And so in December of 2015, the president declared Boko Haram as technically defeated. And from that time, because you had a declaration from the president, the policy of the government changed from fighting an active group to clearing the remnants of a defeated group. And you know that will be reflected in the budget and how seriously the issue is taken. And unfortunately, what we saw from 2018 was a bouncing back of Boko Haram. We saw some of the deadliest attacks carried out by the group in the last 2 years. So in December of 2018, we saw 71 Nigerian soldiers of Niger Republic were killed. In March this year, that was December 2019, not 2018, sorry. In March this year, about 100 Chadian soldiers were killed. And on the same day, 47 Nigerian soldiers were killed. And we have seen several massacres of civilians even this year alone. So Boko Haram has bounced back. It is currently growing in sophistication and lethality. And this is reflected in the latest attack we have seen.
All right, you mentioned the service chiefs. I understand their term must not exceed 2 years, and they've been there for like 5 years already now. The amazing part is that they're also from Northeast, most of them, I think where all these atrocities are happening, many have called on the president to act and sack them, but he has not acted. What could be the reason?
Number one, let's understand that there is no silver bullet in fighting insurgencies. A guerrilla warfare is naturally very tricky and it's very difficult to win. And that's why it is important for the government itself to reflect that in its messaging. If you continue saying we have defeated them, people will think defeating them is easy. But we know that even for the Americans, perhaps the Americans are the best known army in the world. They are the most militarily powerful country in the world, but see how they have been eluded by the Taliban in Afghanistan. Look at what's happening in East Africa with Al-Shabaab and other parts of the world. So fighting an insurgency is a very tricky thing. That's the first thing I would mention. The second thing is Boko Haram is operating in a border region that brings together 4 different countries. And that portion in that area of all the 4 countries is very porous. And because the northeastern part of Nigeria shares ethnicity with the parts of Cameroon, Chad, and Niger that are affected, it is very easy for Nigerian insurgents to cross over to Cameroon without being detected, or to other parts of the other countries. So unfortunately, until you get international cooperation, transnational cooperation between the countries, you can't defeat this group. Because what happens typically is, whenever there is a major onslaught by the Nigerian government, what Boko Haram fighters simply do is to cross over to the Chadian or the Cameroonian or the Nigerian side of the border and hide there. And you know, by international law, the Nigerian military cannot pursue them into Cameroon and fight them there. And whenever the Cameroonian soldiers launch an onslaught, Boko Haram then leaves that territory to another country. And so what you need is a simultaneous planning by all 4 countries, and simultaneous execution of onslaughts together so that they can flush out the insurgents from wherever they are, so they will have no place to hide. And there was this multinational joint task force, which I said was revived by President Buhari when he came in. Unfortunately, that alliance has got weakened in the last 18 months or so, when the Chadian president started complaining that other countries are not paying their fair share in the fight against Boko Haram to sustain that coalition. And he even threatened that Chad will stop fighting Boko Haram outside its borders. Now, the danger is Chad is the headquarters of the multinational joint task force. And so when you are hosting the headquarters and you say, I am not going to fight again, or I am not going to finance it again, the coalition will naturally weaken. And that's what we saw. The Chadian president has later backtracked his statement that he will not fight Boko Haram outside Chad, but his other complaints still stand. And I think the Nigerian president should reach out to other countries and re-strengthen this coalition, because it has been very effective in the fight against Boko Haram. We shouldn't let it weaken. And that's why when it started getting weakened last year, there was a whole editorial in ICC's magazine, Annaba magazine, in which they celebrated the weakening of the multinational joint task force, because they knew how effective it was against them. Now, the one more thing I would mention is the need to involve vigilantes that have very granular knowledge of the terrain. We know that Boko Haram continued to wreak havoc in Borno and Yobe until 2013, when young people in that part of the world initiated a vigilante group against the insurgents. And like the insurgents, they also know all the bushes and the terrain. They also know the insurgents. In fact, some of them were their childhood friends, neighbors, or mates in school. So they know the place very well, and therefore they are very helpful to the army that is brought from other parts of the country to the northeast. And I think the governor of Borno State recently recommended 10,000 more civilian JTF, and I think the government should support them, but it should be done in a way, in an organized manner, so that they don't become security threat after Boko Haram.
You know, it's very funny that it's just 4 countries. These are just 4 borders. And what should play here, in my opinion, I don't know what you think, Audu, is unity. If the 4 countries come together and agree that they want to fight Boko Haram, I think it is possible. Because the question now is, who exactly is funding the Boko Haram? I mean, the abduction of the Chibok girls brought Boko Haram and its atrocities into like international record. Do you think that is exactly what they want, to be internationally acclaimed as the biggest terrorist group in the world? But the biggest question now is, who is funding them?
Yeah, I mean, you are right. The best way out is for these 4 countries to unite. And I think the unity should be reflected in their everyday operations, and their meetings should be more frequent than after every 6 months or annually. Now, the question of funding Boko Haram is a great question, because for me, Boko Haram is like an overflowing bath. When your bath gets overflown, the first thing you want to do is to stop the pump from running. It is only after you have stopped the supply that you can now clear the problem. But if you allow the tap to continue to run, then you will continue evacuating water, but you will never clear your bath. Now, if you want to defeat Boko Haram, you have to block their finance and supply routes. Now, the finance of Boko Haram is one of the trickiest areas of Boko Haram. It has remained mystery for the past 10 years. And that's because they operate in a clandestine fashion. They are very secretive organization when it comes to finances. But I have recently done an extensive research into their financing, and I can tell you that I can mention some major ways of finance. And these methods of financing are divided into their 3 major phases of development. We know that Boko Haram was founded in 2002 or early 2003, but they did not become violent until 2009, so they had 6 years to prepare. Now, in that period of preparation, they were usually engaged in legal enterprises. The group gave micro loans to its members, and the members undertook legal businesses, and whenever they made profits, they remitted part of it to the organization. They also relied on annual Islamic payment called zakah. They urged their members who are rich to pay zakah to them, which is about 1/40th of your wealth if you are a Muslim and an adult who is rich. And so if you are paying 1/40 of your entire wealth and you are rich, even if it is just 2 or 3 members that paid, that will be a lot of money. Now, they also relied on farming, because their leader and the group had very big farms on the outskirts of Maiduguri, and they cultivated cash crops and they sold them and funded the group. Now, these are some of the methods of funding before the group became violent. But when it became violent in 2009 and then resurfaced in 2010, they had to change their methods of funding because they were no longer in the city. The first thing they did was to reach out to Al-Qaeda. They reached out to Al-Qaeda asking for financial support, and we have evidence showing that Al-Qaeda gave them at least 200,000 euros. We have now...
Which year was that?
Sorry?
Which year was that?
It was in 2010. Okay. Al-Qaeda gave them 200,000 euros in 2010. And we have evidence of latest exchange between the leader of Boko Haram, Abu Bakr Shekau, and the leaders of Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb based in Mali. We don't know how the money was transferred, but by their letter, Shekau sent a letter asking for the help. The leader wrote a letter saying, we are going to help. And then Shekau later wrote a letter thanking them for the help. So this shows that the help had arrived. Now, they released the letters by themselves, that is Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb. Now, in that period, they used that 200,000 euros to buy weapons and then started engaging in bank robberies. If you remember, between 2011 and 2013 and 14, Boko Haram was very much involved in breaking banks. And what they did by breaking banks was taking money from the banks. We know banks, for example, where they took 20 million naira. We know banks where they took about 19 million naira in Bauchi. So they were involved in bank robberies. They were also involved in extorting rich people because they were assassinating people around 2011, 2014. So they would call up people on phone or send them text messages, rich people in the communities, and tell them deposit so amount of money for us, or we are going to assassinate you. And so they use that methods to raise a lot of money. And we also know that they were engaged in stealing cows, in rustling cows, and then they will take them to Niger and to market in northwestern Nigeria. And some researches would show that Boko Haram has stolen at least 50,000 cows in the last 5-6 years or so. In fact, by some statistics, they have stolen about 200,000 cows in Cameroon alone. So they made money out of that. We know that they are now in the bush, they are farming in the bush. They also rely on fishing and taxing fishermen in the Lake Chad region where they control. So there are lots of sources of funds. Maybe the last one I would mention is the money they get out of kidnappings. The Chibok girls you spoke about 102 of them were released by Boko Haram after negotiations. Now, the Wall Street Journal reports, after interviewing some of the people involved in the negotiations, that Boko Haram was paid 3 million euros to release the Chibok girls. We also know that about a year ago, they released University of Maiduguri lecturers and some 10 police women they captured. The BBC reported that they were paid $2 million to release them. There was a time they captured 6 French family that was working in Cameroon. The Cameroonian government did not tell us how much was paid to them to release them, but a Nigerian government document shows that the Cameroonian government and other governments there paid $3 million to get those released. You can see that they are making lots of money. Yeah, so and so these are some of the sources of funds. And like I said initially, we cannot defeat Boko Haram until we track their sources of funding and block them. You may remember, and this will be my final point because of time, that recently about 6 Nigerians were convicted in the United Arab Emirates for allegedly funding Boko Haram. Now, they were alleged to have been receiving dollars from an Arab man who would come to the United Arab Emirates from Turkey, give them dollars, and then they transfer naira into the Nigerian Boko Haram agents' accounts. I think that court proceedings need to be investigated by the Nigerian government.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. That with all this evidence, with all this information, I mean, it should not take Nigerian government, especially, such a long time to tackle the Boko Haram. I mean, you look at even Nigerian army. Nigerian army is one of the most powerful, I think, in Africa, in Nigeria and even in Africa. So, is it so difficult for Nigerian army to tackle this Boko Haram group? Audu, my question also is, every time the Nigerian government claims that they have ended Boko Haram, that is when the group actually comes out to deny such claims and do something else. So why should then the government keep claiming that they've ended it without proof?
Yeah, and I think that's something I have spoken to earlier, which is around the factors why Boko Haram hasn't been defeated for this long. And I think what the Nigerian government should do now is to realize that, to come to terms with the fact that Boko Haram was weakened in the past, but it has bounced back now. And new ideas, new tactics would have to be developed to now take the fight to the group and defeat it once and for all. As you said, the Nigerian army has been held throughout Africa for being one of the bravest armies in Africa. Unfortunately, this matter is taking them too long. And now you can see some suggestions that I have issues with in the country. After the latest attack, the Borno State governor recommended the use of mercenaries to fight Boko Haram.
Yes.
And, you know, some governors have already supported him, saying, yes, that's the right way to go. And I think that's, for me, is a proposition that we must consider meticulously. It is not something we should rush into, because mercenaries are known to be warmongers. They eat and survive on wars. And now if you take them to any place, the first thing they do is to destabilize the area. We know that they are notorious in human rights violations, in sexual-based violence, in recruiting child soldiers, in forced displacement, and lots of other crimes. We also know that there are constitutional issues around the recruitment of militia in Nigeria, because the Nigerian constitution only recognizes the Nigerian military to secure our borders and the Nigerian police to police our country. And now if you are bringing militia from outside Nigeria to fight, you are bringing non-Nigerians, non-members of any regular army to come and fight in a country without any constitutional backing. And I think the Nigerian government should be careful with that supposition, with that proposition. I think the right thing to do is to spend the amount of money you will spend on hiring militia on your own military, and also advocate for more international support, logistical and technical training and support from especially Western countries to help you in tackling the crisis, rather than bringing mercenaries without constitutional recognition, with all their records of human rights violation and international law violations.
Because the question, also another question is, Boko Haram will record videos and they'll stream these videos. Are you telling me in the whole world there is nobody who can track where that video is streaming from, or where they are actually streaming all these videos from?
Yeah, I think you are right. And that brings up a very important issue, which is around the role of technology in fighting terrorism and insurgency. And I think the Nigerian military can leverage technology, for example, to track where Boko Haram members are. Of course, one thing we must not be naive about is that they are also internet savvy. They are very, very smart. They know how to stream, when to stream, and how to stay anonymous. And they read lots of books, I can tell you, on ensuring how they continue to elude security forces, because they know security forces will track them. But I think you are right. They shouldn't be more sophisticated than our military. They shouldn't be more sophisticated than the giant of Africa. Nigeria prides itself as the giant of Africa. And I think technology has a big role to play. And the Nigerian military and our security and intelligence agencies should do more in leveraging technology in the fight against Boko Haram.
All right, let's talk about yesterday. The House of Assembly, even the president's party members in the Senate disagreed with him this time around, and they call him to sack the service chiefs. Also, they actually summoned him to Parliament to answer some questions. So there's also a question here live as we are streaming from Musa Idris. He says, thanks a lot. So many people blame the security chiefs for not eliminating the Boko Haram just because of the allowance they're getting. So what can you say about that? So it's actually two questions here. Why is the president ignoring the whole issue around the service chiefs? And can you comment on that comment from Musa Idris?
So, the question around why the president is ignoring, I don't know what's on the president's mind, but I know that there has been calls now for years for the sacking of the service chiefs or their replacement with others. Now, the president argues that you don't replace commanders in the middle of a war. And he would say, I say that as a former military general. And but then most Nigerians believe that the service chiefs haven't delivered. Many people will say they are a failure. And I saw the proceedings of the National Assembly yesterday calling for the sacking of the service chiefs. And I think the president should look at those recommendations and take the to ensure that he does what is right. Because if you have someone in place for 5 years, of course, our constitution and our laws provide for appointment of service chiefs for 2 years and then renewal for 2 more years. It doesn't say anything about staying for 5 years. The current service chiefs have been in place for 5 years. And I totally understand where Nigerians are coming from. The service chiefs are the leaders of our military, and they should take responsibility for whatever happens. If it is good, they take the credit, and if it is bad or wrong, then they would naturally take the blame. I urge the president, like other Nigerians, to consider the calls of the Nigerians and the National Assembly, and ensure that the leadership of the Nigerian military is the right kind of leadership that is required for the moment. I think the military itself will have more morale to fight if they know that they have a leadership that is serious and that in which Nigerians have confidence.
All right, thank you so much, Bulama. I know you're a very busy man, but I won't allow you to go before you leave some words of hope to the viewers that have joined us this evening. We have a lot of them who are hailing you for a good job that you're doing. Any parting words, any words of hope for Nigerians?
Yeah, I just maybe would conclude with a reminder that the 70 people that were killed, some will say 110, some will say give different numbers, are not just statistics. They are not just figures. They are human beings like you and I. Like all of our audience tonight. They had dreams, they had hopes, they had families, they had a future they wanted to build. And if you want to quantify the value of what Nigeria lost in these 70 people, quantify your own life, measure the value of your own life and multiply it by 70. That's what we lost. And that's what our president and the government should realize. The country is now in grief. We are all mourning, but we will get out of this. We will emerge stronger and we will defeat Boko Haram. We will defeat Boko Haram and build a peaceful, united, and prosperous Nigeria. This will take time. It will take efforts and energy. We might lose more lives, but I have no doubt in my mind that we are going to defeat them and emerge stronger.
Thank you so much, Bulama Bukarti, Audu Bulama Bukarti, for joining me this evening. And this has been a very insightful, very deep discussion. And thank you so much. There's a lot of stuff that you actually said that I know will be very helpful to all our viewers tonight. But thank you very much. I really appreciate all our viewers that joined us this evening. I also want to thank you for joining us. Until another live chat next time, a good evening.
Thank you.